am Joe Marcello, joined as always by my partner in comic book crime, Mike Farah.
Hey, everyone.
And today we have a special guest. We have the gentleman who has provided us with our latest new logo for the Dollar Bin Bandits. He is none other than Patrick McGrath.
Hi, how's it going?
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
He's had a pretty interesting career. He has spent probably the last 20 years working at Marvel Comics, working on graphics. So, Pat, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm trying to figure out when I should stop speaking.
I'm sorry. We ramble on. Yeah, no, just jump in.
Jump
in wherever.
Yeah.
You know.
So let's start off the same way we do with everyone. How did you get interested, or how did you get into comics initially?
Like, I guess a lot of kids that get in, at least the ones that end up being going, into fine arts at some point. You start, as a young kid, you start drawing, and your parents tell you, "Oh, look at your drawings. You're great at drawing. Look at what he drew. He drew this thing." Comics just kind of come along with that.
I was just going to jump in and say, we've known each other for years. I know you come from a big family with a few brothers. Were they into comics before you did? Did they introduce you?
No, not really. I mean, I was the one that my brothers were all really good at sports. Like, basically, I was the one that was, you guys are going to go play. I'm going to go draw a picture or play with my Transformers, or set up, like, probably well into when kids, it was too weird to be playing with toys, probably, and I think that's part of it. It's part of like what got me into comics too. At the same time, it was like, watching, like, loving to watch cartoons. And I did have an uncle and a cousin that were into comics, and they had them laying around, and I started reading those. And eventually, I think I got into Ninja Turtles. We were talking about that before, and I just, I think I was in a KB toy store, and they had like a rack there of like the Archie Ninja Turtle comics. So I'm like, oh, let me try these. I guess that's like the gateway, whatever you call it. But then at the same, like, right around that time is like when really the Batman came out, like 89 Batman. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really cool. I think before that, all I knew of Batman was like Super Friends and, the Adam West, TV show. And I'm like, this is really cool. And then I think I remember hearing you would hear on the radios, like, oh, they killed Robin, like stories like this, like stuff that we get into. And then, so you would find, and I remember going to the comic store, trying to find my Ninja Turtles comics. Are there any new one? Not realizing that they come out every month. Like, they're just not going to be a bunch of random new ones there. They come out on a schedule. Mm-hmm. Like, you're still like learning when you're 11, you don't know this stuff. So I see this like comic of, the new Robin, like jumping, through the window, or it was like a silhouette or something. I'm trying to remember. Like, that was when Tim Drake stole,
like the spotlight on the building.
Yeah, the spotlight, and he came out, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I think it's kind of like part of, I guess a lot of why people like the Robin and the sidekick kind of identity is pretty much teenage. You're preteen, teen age. You're like, oh, that's cool. I mean, it's like, I obviously I'm not a billionaire. I can't be Batman, but maybe I could be like a Robin or a Nightwing. Like, as you just keeps building. You see Batman, you learn about this. It's like, well, what happened to Dick Grayson? And you're like, oh, he's even cooler now. He's Nightwing. And then, your Teen Titans and all this stuff.
Hole.
And down the rabbit hole. And I was like you guys, I was in that window in the early 90s where they just, the big, comics exploded, and they all had all the big things and all the collector's items.
Let me ask you an important question as it pertains to what we discuss. Do you still have any of those comics?
Yes, I just do. I just looked around. I was like, oh, here are all these Ninja Turtles comics.
That's awesome. Because a lot of people we talk to, I think us included, when we, at least certainly for myself, we get introduced to comics at a point in our lives, and we're like, oh, these are cool. Like, the first comics I physically actually had and collected were the original G.I. Joe Marvel run, and then Transformers. And they were awesome. And for some reason, I parted ways with those. And, for whatever reason, 10 or so years later, I actually start getting into comics. And I'm like, oh, I know I have those someplace. No, I don't. I have to start collecting them again. So I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, they introduce themselves to comics. They either, they get sold, taken away, get rid of them. And then they're like, wow, I really like those. And they have to kind of find them again. So it's great to hear you still have them.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have. There are some ones that I've moved a bunch. Like I for my first like 12 years at Marvel, I lived in the same apartment basically. And Mike was there a bunch of times. Yes.
I was jealous of your comic book walls.
We just collected, and that's I started working in trades, so I got so many trades, and I had like the entire wall of trades and stuff. And like some of it was stuff I worked on. Others was just because Marvel would give you a bundle every week, and you would get what came out. And every move after that, like the biggest move is like, okay, I need to get rid of a bunch of this stuff. So I did sell a bunch of those trades off. Yeah. But I mean, I kept the ones that I worked on, ones that meant something to me. So, but I had like a bunch of like runs of, I probably had, I don't want to, some that I just didn't like that much. Some that are probably the notorious worst runs of X-Men ever. I think I was there for, like certain ones that I'm like, I could probably get rid of this. I don't need to hang, at the time when you're like, you have this and you're like, well, it's just kind of cool to have a completist shelf. I've got all of them right here. Like, no, you could pick and choose. And it even came down to like in the last few moves, I went through my like 90s stash of comics that I'm like, I don't need all of these, like some of these, like, these ones that were in probably million, some of them might have been up to millions in print run, right? I mean, the 90s got nuts. Like X-Men was getting printed a million copies a month, so it's not worth none of it's worth anything. I just kind of hung on to the ones that really meant something to me. Like those early Batman stuff that I like, I love that, like, who is it? Chuck Dixon and a few other like guys that just wrote like some like one-off detective comic stories that were really that were just awesome. I love that stuff. That was, that was the one thing that was great about like Batman. There's always something more you could probably find. There's no way I would have all the Batman stuff. Yes, there's a limited amount of Archie comics, Ninja Turtle comics. They only put one of those out a month, but they put tons of Batman out. So.
Yeah, those Ninja Turtles should be worth a fair amount.
Yeah, are they the Eastman ones?
No, they're the Archie Comics ones. And I even looked. Okay. And I opened my number one this morning, and I looked. I have a feeling. I went down. I looked at the ND shot. I'm like, yep, there it is, third printing.
So they're the dreaded reprints. But I mean, they mean something to you, so
yeah,
who cares?
That's why I hung on to it.
That's the interesting thing about today's market. I think. As it pertains to like first, second, and third printings, we've gotten to a point where it's not unheard of for second or third printings to be worth more than the first. Only because they will change things up on the cover for the second or third printings, and there's far fewer of them printed for that for that purpose, and they become even more rare. And
yeah, it was crazy.
Suckers like us buy them.
When I started realizing that like stuff that was printed like when I was working at Marvel, the stuff we're printing now is worth more than the stuff that like just off, they're just rare. It's all about the supply and demand, the rarity, like the fact that in the 90s they printed everything with a collector's item. Like once you print collector's item on something, it's automatically not a collector's item. You're telling people to hang on to this, so therefore it will not be rare.
Exactly. That being said, all the pops that we have don't mean shit. Sorry.
All right, Pat, we want to hear about your time at Marvel. And first of all, we're used to interviewing writers, artists,
big names.
inkers. Yeah, you're still a big name. Don't sell yourself.
I'm not short. Eric Larson. I'm not Mark Wade.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Look, they didn't become those guys overnight,
Exactly. But you play a big role in one that nobody, not a lot of people understand. They don't know what does a designer do. at a place like Marvel Comics. So I was hoping for our listeners and viewers, you can just sort of tell like what kind of things you did as a designer at Marvel. I mean, I know logos were one piece, but certainly not the only thing.
Well, I mean, as you know, how we met in the trades department, the special projects division or something we called it. And I mean, at the time when we started,
better than it was.
You worked at MI6.
Yeah, right, exactly.
MI6, special particular set of skills. But it was something that when I got hired and I'm going into like making trade paperbacks and stuff was something I always recognized that Marvel did horribly. Like, like DC was making great. They had collections. You get all of the Preacher books, like they printed regularly. They had collections in the late 90s to 2000s. They had that game. That was down. You go to Barnes and Nobles, they were already there. So that's what Marvel was trying to build when I came on. And they were already doing it. Mike was there, but so I started as basically, I would call it like almost glorified production, like just kind of putting together, like we have all the issues here. We need it's just repackaging printed comics already. And from what I would do at that point was like, I would love it whenever we were doing some type of odd collection that was just random issues here and there that we didn't have a logo for. There was not like an official logo for this book. So I would like go out of my way to try to create something, cool, like make this it's like when you're trying to make a name for it, you spend hours later, like hours off the book. There's something you could do that would just satisfy the need, or you can try to make something your own. And that's, besides designing the collections of hardcovers and, I think I did a pretty good job at that. People like that, but eventually I kind of like recognized at least as a logo, like I could do logos. So, working, I had some pretty good relationships with some of the editors at the time. I mean, I ended up being roommates with Andy Schmidt and John Meskis when they were both editors there. So with a good relationship with them, whenever there was a new title, I started getting like, I remember She-Hulk, the She-Hulk, the dance lot for She-Hulk, which was a great book. I doing that logo is one of the first logos I can remember doing. And from there, Andy and I had a great relationship working. So, there's a few other projects that came along like that. And then eventually, I'm not sure if it was before or after, our division kind of got folded into the licensing side, but I got recognized. I got put on the task of trying to combine or come up with a new Amazing Spider-Man logo. They wanted to kind of tie the comics to the consumer products, so we have a new logo, because there was like all different types of Spider-Man logos everywhere. Some of them, as much as I love like the original Amazing Spider-Man logo, from the comics,
bring that up later.
It's a bit difficult sometimes to work with for consumer products. So that's when I honestly, when I redesigned those logos, some of the first ones I did were just straight up, how can I at least make the best version of this logo that everyone knows for consumer products? And that was one of the options. It didn't get picked. What I did go for was more of just a straight up the Arch logo that you see on. It's still being used on, like a version of it is still being used on like all consumer products today, like for the last 15 years or so.
That's awesome.
So, but like,
it's gotta feel satisfying.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. It is pretty nice. Like all the since Ultimate Spider-Man, the cartoon, and the last two, I did. There's still riffs off the same logo. The Spider-Man now that did Marvel Spider-Man cartoon. I don't know how well you guys know the different cartoons that they have now, but those are all derivative. Not they're riffs off the original. They all kind of go back to that. So. Right. And from then I became kind of like the logo guy in licensing. Like whenever they needed I would go back and forth at that point. I'd still be doing stuff for collections, like paperbacks, hardcovers, but whatever they needed for a new franchise logo for something, or I would work on that. And it didn't come up that often, but over the year there was always something new like that. And as Marvel just kind of grew while I was there too. That's a kind of crazy. Like I came in during bankruptcy, and I remember like the big announcement that they had, then we're out of bankruptcy. It was like, woo! We all came up, and it was at the old, and as we grew, there just became more times that they needed a logo for something. Like we started having TV shows and cartoons and different things. So, I mean, I never really got to the point where like early on, we would do some like riffs we would send some ideas to like studios for the movie logos, but they usually did their own thing. And although, I mean, sometimes they go back and forth. Sometimes like Mike said with Hawkeye, and like even I think Black Panther was like I think J.G. Rochelle, like the designer from Comicraft, did that logo, and that's like the Black Panther one is his. It's, and oftentimes like when they first announced the movies, the logos are never exactly what they end up being finally, and they usually take something from the comics. I don't know. I feel like I've gone off the rails here a little bit, so
I want to jump in
pull
there.
It back.
You said something really interesting. So you obviously, first of all, you've worked 20 years at one place, which I think today is few and far between. Not many people can say they've worked for 20 years at one particular company. So in and of itself, that's awesome. Congrats. For as pertains to Marvel, you said that you were there when they came out of bankruptcy. I mean, you must have seen a lot of change there over the past 20 years. For them to come out of bankruptcy, then to skyrocket to where they are now, I mean, you must have freaked out a bit when you heard Disney was purchasing them.
I remember that day.
And then to see where they went to afterwards. What is that like for you professionally, and in terms of, and what I mean by that is in terms of your work and what you're doing, and basically just that, how it impacted what you do.
I mean, part of it was like, I think that's why I stayed there so long, is because things just kept changing and kept getting bigger, and like, I remember at some one point I was like, I saw where things were going with like this was even like, I don't think anybody really knew the plans for the MCU, even like until the end credits of the first Iron Man movie, when it's like Nick Fury's there and he's saying, we got an Avengers, initiative, or, something like, I don't think anyone really knew that they were going to really try to make this thing what it is. I mean, it always kind of made, like, the idea of it always sounded great, and I'm like, I don't know why they can't do this, but they were actually going to try to do it, like, and build this. So I think I remember at the time being like, I need to see at least this through the Avengers movie, and then like after that, it's just kind of like saying, I need to see this through the next big thing. And I mean, as I was there, every time, like, especially my first 10 years there, I feel like I also got promoted a bunch of times. It kind of like kept me interested in more responsibility, higher profile projects, and like, also this is stuff I love, it's like, you don't often get to work, at the place that your place that you would want to work. It's funny. It's like, I've been doing a lot of work for Hasbro now. And it's like the biggest thing I ever growing up was Transformers were the thing that we had. Like, I got 3 brothers. We had every Transformer. So the idea that I would go from working on comics back to like working on Transformer stuff, which I am right now, it's like insane. It's like the kid, the 11-year-old me would never have believed this, So,
yeah, dude, let's not bury that lead. Hello. Yeah.
What's that?
That never came up in conversation, Mike. He's working on Transformers.
Well, I know. He didn't tell me. I know he's working at Hasbro. But yeah,
I'm freelancing, so I've been doing
a little work on this call. He would crap his pants.
Working on My Little Pony. That's Hasbro.
Yeah, that's a good point.
My Little Pony.
No, I'm glad he's working on Transformers. He
No,
could be
that's
working
awesome.
on, the Marvel line too, the Legends, which I became a little too obsessed with.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's like I haven't done any Marvel IP, even though or Disney. I haven't done anything Disney IP related. I guess probably because the contact that I have at there is Tom Ravelli, formerly of Marvel also. He works on the action brands, which are that's the Hasbro owned brands. Like, so that's basically where I'm going to be doing work on.
Cool.
So, and yeah, it's been fun. It's been great. I mean, one of the best things that they did. I mean, I think I signed non-disclosure. I did sign non-disclosure agreements for some stuff that I'm working on, but other things like there's a retro brand that they came out that was basically, I'm working on things that they took the packaging of the toys that I had when I was a kid.
The Transformers stuff.
The Transformers
yeah,
toy.
Dude,
all that artwork. And like
I've been eyeballing that stuff, and my wife is like, no, like, it's no.
Yeah, I mean, all the Siege stuff, like the different the War for Cybertron toys, they're all really cool. I mean, I'm always kind of impressed. I mean, I would love to like just, if I had all the money in the world, I would on the masterpiece Transformers.
Yeah,
it's like Optimus Prime. Like,
get me a Unicron, and I will.
Oh man,
right,
dude.
So get like with a $500 Unicron or whatever.
Yeah. That's that's for another podcast. But that's
how do we get all the money in the world?
Yeah.
We tried to ask our guests, and so far nobody has. They're come up with the solution.
I'll tell you one way to not get
podcast.
It's to spend it on the $700 or $800 self-transforming Optimus Prime that they made. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes, I did. I saw this video. It was.
I was like, that's insane.
It was Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes promoting it because I did an unboxing of it, and they're like, "Yo, check this out, bro, you snoogans!" And then like. Yeah. Optimus Prime transforms and starts talking. I'm like, and I told my wife, "Hey, check this out."
Yeah.
She's like, "Yeah, how much is that?" I was like, "Oh, it's like $700." She's like,
"It's like,
all right, good. Next video."
It's like
right.
It's the same. It's
But that was awesome. I mean, that was pretty cool. Let me ask you: do you ever, or have you worked with, or at all, and come in contact with Larry Hama?
No, I never have. I mean, no. I mean, it's one of the learning. I've always known the name from comics, and just in general, seeing his name like throughout, the night growing up reading and like having it, and that never quite, because I did not read the comics of Transformers and G.I. Joe as much, but now knowing what I didn't know then, like that this Marvel was basically created all the stories for all these Hasbro lines. It's like how intertwined that they were. I did not know that, and until like I started working there. I mean, it's probably, and I feel like my time at Hasbro now is even kind of like stuff I already knew, but now I really realize that I'm like, wow, because it's crazy. I wish I've run into different creators over with my years at Marvel. Some might remember me, others wouldn't. I mean, I think I met Chris Claremont 30 times, but he's never going to remember me.
I still remember the day I bumped into Joe Quesada at my interview at Marvel.
Oh, really?
Yes. He just walked in wearing gray sweatpants, and I walked. This guy walked by me. I'm like,
the uniform.
Who the hell is this? And I'm wearing a suit. Michael got me an interview, by the way. And I walk in. I'm like, who is this guy? And it wasn't until like a month or two later, I'm like, oh, it's Joe Quesada. I'm like,
yeah.
Dress up, dude. I mean, come on.
That was when I started. That's one of the ways that Marvel changed a lot. Is that
no sweat.
I mean, I don't think not many people are walking in wearing sweatpants. I mean, it still is always casual, but like, I mean, people wear t-shirts, everything, but there's not. I don't know. Joe. I mean, Joe's like a media figure now. He can't walk around wearing sweatpants.
Oh no, this was way
Yeah.
back. I mean, obviously, and
like that's what he was. Yeah, that's what just
that was it.
Yeah.
Were you at which office were you in?
I don't know, wherever Mike was.
I
don't remember.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was only there 2 years, and we still moved, I think, twice while I was there.
Yeah, you started at the 6th Avenue one, but I started
yes,
the one by the library
by Bryant Park.
Yeah, and that
yeah,
I always tell people that office was like, you could tell that was the bankruptcy office, because like if you just like the carpet
was ripped.
The carpet and I always said
ripped,
it's like it was like they, it's like they went to some college town and they like scattered all the frat houses to see who was changing their carpet, and they went and said, "We'll take that. You can throw this out. We'll put it down." It looked like it was from a frat, like the stains, just big mess.
I didn't notice all of that when I was there. I didn't think about it, but that totally makes sense that it was just bankruptcy.
And because a month later I interviewed at DC, and I walked into the DC offices, and I was like it's a lot different over here. You got Mr. Freeze's suit in a case over there, and there's a circling bat signal in the waiting room. I'm like, it's a lot different. I mean, they had the Thor hammer in the entryway, which was cool. I was like, all right, that's neat. But your carpet looked like someone peed on it. But
well, that was before Marvel had Big Daddy Disney.
Well, that was before they had Spider-Man. It was, or it was like
that came out right time. when I left that movie, and that pretty much sealed the deal.
First Spider-Man came out while I was there. I mean, I was there after X-Men, but before first Spider-Man.
So Pat, go ahead, Mike. No,
all right, sorry, we're just.
Real quick. I want to just the differences between the offices. I remember while DC was still in Manhattan, I remember going on walks out. You could look in the address, you see their address in the indicia of a DC comic, so they're up on Columbus Circle, and that's when we were in the crappiest offices. And I would walk, just all you do is walk up by Central Park, and you can look up and you see bat like a cutout Batman in one of the windows up in the offices up there, and I was like, it's like, wow, it must be awesome in there. Warner Brothers, they're owned by a multimedia conglomerate. They must have money everywhere. And then, I mean, I still remember thinking that years down the road of Disney buying us, I'm like, we're owned by a multimedia conglomerate. Why can't why is it so hard to get a new chair?
But then you come to realize that no one gives a shit at Warner Brothers about Disney, about DC. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I was going to jump in, Pat.
Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, not at all. We are keeping it cash, but I would love to see some of the logos you've created, because I know you have them queued up.
Kind of.
So, could we take a look at some of your?
All right. Well,
some of your wares, as it were.
I'm trying. I don't really have this in a specific order, so. Well, what was the one you wanted to see? Secret Empire was I could actually, since I could share this, let me go through something.
I mean, people are gonna, I think, recognize a lot of these, and obviously not know that who was behind the actual creation of the logos.
Okay, I'm gonna try to.
And now they're gonna put a face to the logo. This is an exciting moment. You want to tell us a little bit about this one?
Well, yeah, so the interesting thing. When you have the long relationship that you at Marvel that I had, and this is probably the 5th or 6th big event that I had done for publishing while I was in the licensing department, but I would get when these big projects came out, I would love to be able to jump on and do a public, because part of it is it's almost like it's creative freedom, in a sense that I'm working with guys that love this stuff, and I don't have to go through the more corporate channels or listen to anyone from the West Coast when it's like a TV or there's just some frustrating loops that you have to go through. And with the guys in editorial, it was always pretty quick, back and forth. I know we just understood each other's language. So when I found out the story for this, that it was basically going to be Captain America was a secret Hydra agent, and and it was going to be kind of revealed over time, and eventually it was going to end up, you know, I don't know, in the final story, you know, good wins. So Captain America is going to come back. So that was kind of the plan going through this. I had was to, I don't know, just slowly loading. This is the
let me ask you something about your work. So in the upper right hand corner, we see the Chitauri ship thing. You know, it's fine.
Yeah.
Now, and look, forgive me for anyone who's listening or sees this. I don't remember every nuance of, you know, Avengers and the world, but I don't know if this existed previously, you know, prior to the Avengers movie, but is this a case of the movies influencing the comics?
There's a lot of that going back and forth. I mean, I'm sure that is definitely it, because that was like the movie version of the you obviously, I think anyone knowing this knows that's, I mean, this was 2017, the Chitauri in their form, but I don't think anyone, you know, had seen outside of Marvel Studios probably. I mean, Marvel Studios has always been a bit, you know, they keep things closer to the chest than even within Marvel. Like the editorial, sure. Maybe there's a few people in editorial that know, and they all have to sign their own non-disclosure agreements. And you know, so yeah, like when it comes to, they're always trying to go back, and if they can, especially if something hits, I think that's very common in almost any medium though. I mean, Harley Quinn, you know, got put back into the comics at some point. I think I remember it in one of your interviews, you talked about that. So yeah, they do that all the time here. I mean, I think they brought Agent Coulson into the comics, right? And
you're right, they did. He was part of this storyline too. He was like the guy next to he was a pivotal part in this first issue, as I recall.
I'm like trying to get through. You are sharing here. Okay, sorry, I'm gonna stop sharing real quick.
Yeah, no worries.
We can always cut around this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I'm trying to do this, but it's like taking a while to load.
No, it's fine. So we have other questions. Like, let me ask, like, what is the process for you developing a logo for, let's say, in this case, Secret Empire? I'm gonna vent for a hair. Is that I hate too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure as a part of a big, you know, media company that you were, there are a lot of people imparting, you know, their 2 cents. But who makes the call on something like that? Like, are you just the point? I don't want to say you're just the point person, but you're the artist. So
yeah, I mean, I'm the design for this stuff. I'm the designer. Editorial is the client, like the overall editorial, and who has the final say? I would guess. I mean, in this case, I'm trying to remember who was, if it was CD or Axel, or, you know, even Joe still has, like, Joe Quesada would still come around, even though he wasn't the official, he's still like a whatever chief creative officer or something.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, Tom Brevoort has a lot of pull in that office, just so you know. Like, I mean, I feel like as much as, you know, there is an editor in chief, Tom, he does a lot of the heavy lifting, I think. So, and when I was working on these projects, a lot of it was talking with him. I think even through, you know, there was somebody else managing it, but I would usually send something, and then they would like run it up the flagpole. They would say, oh, we're going to go through whoever needs to see this editorial. And then I would get, you know, different notes would come back. So it really depended on the project. Sometimes it was like really quick. Other times, I remember like with Axis, that was one that was, I remember like, I feel like I was just emailing back and forth with Tom Brevoort, and like that was the decision made. But other ones, it took a while. Other times, more people had to see it before it got chosen. So, but I mean, the good thing about these projects is that it wasn't a lot of, with editorial, it was always like, once they kind of, we kind of kept getting in the right direction. It wasn't a lot of backtracking and we need to redo something because somebody somewhere didn't see something, and now they want to throw they want to, whatever you want to say, put their 2 cents in, and now we have to restart over again. They were always usually kind of like heading toward the, it was rarely was anything ever just out of left field. So, and that's enjoyable to work on, because especially I always liked, exploring. I mean, I want to make something that works. I like hearing the story. What's the story about? I mean, not everything. It's comics is the medium, so I feel like a lot of times people almost use comic books as the motif itself within a comic.
Yeah,
and it works sometimes. It does, and other projects, and not so much. And for these different ones, like for this, it was just like gonna be kind of like I'm trying to like didn't want it to feel like Nazi, or like that type of regime, like the Hydra regime taking over, but we tried to start it off feeling like this is something insidious coming in and taking over. So that's why with the Secret War, when I could at least show this, because I feel like it's really slow when I'm just trying to go through these different. Oh, this is actually going through, right? Can you see all these?
Cool. Yeah.
When I go through, okay. I don't know if it's slowing down when I do it full screen. So let me just do it this way then.
Yeah, that's fine.
But
that's fine.
So it started, with this, but the idea was to have it slowly transform. And this is one of the ones I really wish I had extra time on. I would love to go back. I remember thinking at the time, like, it's just the time frame sometimes is so tight and they need to put something out, that I love these transitions, but some of them I feel like I could have really worked a little bit more to have it even be a smoother transition. But it was supposed to originally be a 9-issue. I think it ended up being 10. But the idea
was going to be a progression issue.
Yeah, it was in this. It is on the covers, the color schemes, everything. Like, so I think if I do it this, I mean, it's smaller here, but when you go through, are you seeing the whole cover?
Yeah.
In my entire.
Very cool. Did you come up with the concept of changing it as it went?
Yeah. Everything. Awesome. I mean, not the artwork, obviously, the artist. But like the change over time. Yeah.
Right.
So
I need to go back and check that out.
Yeah.
I think it. I mean, I really love like this one, the hidden thing. I think it just says that it's just really, if you look at it real quick, it's you don't see it, then you're like, oh, what's going on in there?
Yeah,
but
absolutely,
sure.
That's awesome.
And I feel like this is what kind of set the tone for the whole thing. Like when I first did this, and then the rest of the idea of the change over time, and we had already done a few of these change over time ideas for the series. Like, how many issues is it? What's going on? I mean, at least one. I mean, Axis was the other one.
Yeah, I'd love to see Axis, because that
Axis
must have been,
is like,
some effort to try to get it so that it's, legible.
I love doing this
upside
down
stuff.
And
right side up.
It's actually one of the easier words to do. I feel like, because it's got that, when you have a symmetrical letter in the middle, or somewhat in the middle,
helps.
kind of. But I remember in this meeting, like, hearing about the story, what's going to happen there in this story in Axis, X-Men, like the hero, their alignments, or whatever, like a D&D term, right? Like your alignment, your evil, good, chaotic, whatever. They're all going to switch. So, and somebody, and like, I remember Brevoort telling me, like, in their editorial meeting when they were pitching this, somebody in that mentioned an ambiogram as the logo. I'm like, I can do that. Like, I wasn't there. It was just me and him talking. And I was like, oh yeah, that sounds great. And like, I remember sketching this and I sent this off to him. This was one of the quickest turnarounds I've ever had for a logo design.
Wow.
I'm like,
cool.
I put this out and it went. So, and the idea of the rotate, I think I even put together the idea of the rotating comics, like, over time, like as the series goes, it keeps rotating, and
that's cool.
And then, until it finally, like, there would be 3 stages. I think in the middle one would be I'm not sure if it lined up exactly that way in the story. I have to go back and check if like by issue 5, if that's where the actual alignment switch happens. I don't know, but that was the idea.
Nice.
So, but that, I mean, and doing this kind of like led to, okay, now we're doing this type of thing. Let's see what else we can do with, making things change over time.
But I thought we could take, some of the last moments here, sort of as a roundtable for us to just talk about like logos and design and what we've.
Oh yeah, totally. And also, I realize this is also a podcast, so I don't.
No,
too heavy on the visuals.
We do clips of it. We could do the whole thing on video. So that stuff will get seen, for sure. But so like, well, I'll put it to Pat first, but Joe, feel free to jump in as well, and I'll jump in. But when you were growing up, or even now, like what were some of the classic logos you thought were, the sort of pinnacle of, the book face type?
I mean, the logos that I feel like that they just stand out. I mean, and just work so well. I mean, Steranko's XMen is like just the one that everyone saw all through the 90s, all from whenever. It's
the uncanny X-Men.
It's just the uncanny. It's that X-Men with a clock and just class, and it's simple. Like now it looks simple, but at the time, it was its own, and it's just iconic and it works. It's just one of those things. Well, it works, and you could always go back to it. It always be, work well. And even like, you could do like we did for licensing, we did another package for just consumer products and that was one of the logo that I did was a riff on I probably have it, but whatever. It's a riff off the 90s cartoon, which was a riff off Steranko's logo basically. So but I mean that, and honestly, the Amazing Spider-Man, I love that original logo, and I really respect those guys that did the stuff before they had like Adobe Illustrator, like the draw, what you had to do with the table, and you draw your perspective lines and everything, and that was one of the things whenever I had a chance to redo or
old school,
or take something that like whenever they were relaunching a title of an existing character, I would always kind of like explore whether or not just reimagine, taking an original logo that somebody did and just imagine what they would have done if they had actually had like Adobe Illustrator, like to maybe enhance it, like make the lines extra, so whatever, just make the platonic ideal of that logo that you could possibly do sometimes. And I've done that a few times. I mean, part of being a designer is trying not to like let your ego get in the way. Like it doesn't have to always be about you and making your mark on something. It's the job. It's like what does the job require? What does it need? And sometimes it does. Sometimes it needs to harken back to the classic, like this is what this character is. And it's hard to get away from anything more classic than the classic logo,
Sure.
So, like the Superman logo, like how
Superman's another one.
That's
pretty classic, and that hasn't, I mean, everybody's taken a hack at it, but I don't think it's changed.
The logo hasn't really changed. I mean, the S is the S,
perfect,
unless you're talking about, when they changed Superman's, the whole power set and whatnot, when he became the electric blue and red and whatnot. That changed, but as it pertains to the logo, and I mean, there really hasn't been any major changes. You had your versions of the comics. You had Action Comics, Adventures of Superman, etc. I as much as I love Superman and I love the logo, it's pretty standard. It's cookie cutter. I do like the more of the I mean, that's cool, that's nice. I mean, that's pretty much what you're going to get in unless you're emo Zack Snyder's version of Superman, but that's pretty much what you're going to get. I always liked the Adventures of Superman logo style in the comics, because it just harkens back to the old kind of golden age of those comics. And along the same lines, the original Batman logo I thought was pretty amazing in that it set the tone for the comic. And they've had a number of iterations since.
Like the original, which one are you talking about? The one with his head and then the wings.
The head and the wings, and just bat with a significant space, man.
Right.
And I always like that one, but I like there was a more recent iteration.
Like in the mid 2000s, I think there was somebody did one. I don't know if it was around the Jim Lee when he was doing it around.
Yeah. Along
with the head in the middle,
lines.
it was really well. I think it was a very well executed version of that.
Yeah. Yes, the head was like a little bit more on the side. The Batman was like on the, like under.
But the lettering was very close to the original.
Yes. Yeah. So I was. That always impressed me.
That I feel like that was like mid 2000s. Like
yeah,
I think
it was fairly recent, in airports,
but that was a
See if I could share this again.
Yeah,
this is one that I like. Yeah, I really like this one too. I mean, it's in some ways, I don't know, a little less of that sort of grim and gritty from the 80s because this predated the 80s, but it's still kind of that. Just I don't know. It's just cool.
Yeah,
even though it breaks up Batman, which obviously is his name is. Fully together, but
I wonder if they like. I don't know what. I feel like at Marvel that would be a no. They would like because of licensing, because of copyright. Like, that they would want it to be one word.
Yeah, this is before obviously all of
that.
They
were worried about copyrights.
Yeah,
but now even if you went back to the classic.
One that always jumped out at me that I always enjoyed was Green Lantern, Green Arrow.
Yeah.
So you had the green, you had the lantern in the middle with Green Lantern and Green Arrow flanking it, and they were kind of circled or just surrounded by like green flames or something like that, which was always
because I know there was a Green Lantern one like that had the green on the one side of the lantern and the lantern in the middle and the flames going. So they probably a mix of the two.
Yeah,
which is good. I always like whenever those classic team ups and whenever they could do a clever way to kind of I mean a clever way to combine the two. Sometimes like things don't work out as well, but when it's done well, I
can't find a good one of that. I always liked a lot of the classic Marvel ones too. So Amazing Spider-Man, the sort of curve, I can try to find that at some point. And then the other ones were Hulk, which I don't know. It's very simple, the Hulk. Big block letters with the
totally
made out of bricks.
Yeah.
Conveys everything you want a Hulk logo to convey.
Yeah.
And
that is
Mighty Thor. When they moved from the old Mighty Thor, which was looked like almost like a tape. With
I never really, I mean, as much
I didn't like the old ragged one.
Ones.
But I love the new one when
I think that was Walt Simonson. Yeah, it was a Walt Simonson era.
Did he actually design the logo?
I don't think he did. I don't think he did, but it might have been like Todd Klein or someone.
Yeah,
that did a ton of logos like that. I don't know. Like there was a few people that did logos. That's like 80s, right? So that might have been Todd Klein.
Let me see if I can get a good one here. That's not a great one, but so I think on both sides there are really good ones. This is not a great version of it, but let's see if I can share my screen. Oops. Yeah. So usually the mighty is colored in. Mm-hmm. So this is not exactly but I mean this lettering is very, regal, I guess, and also sort of harkens back to kind of medieval kind of stuff. I don't know. Very cool.
I think they've kind of kept with this style going forward, at least recently.
Yeah, they've been around, but that's the one that's kind of stuck around. I know that it's been redone a few different times, but that style is kind of stuck around.
Yeah.
So
one that I think that sticks out to me is Spawn.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really nothing like that.
I wonder if McFarlane did that or not.
I'm trying to even remember. I mean, I think I remember it because of course I collect. Do you mean the actual like circle one or the...
No, I like the lettering
I got
of the
like
comic, just Spawn,
I mean, yeah,
with the like the
right.
skull or whatever in the middle.
Yeah. You're right. Actually, let me.
It's got like Now that I'm looking at that icon, it's actually got like
It's actually pretty cool. I mean,
yeah,
you know, it's like crazy and over the top, but that's Image and Spawn. So
yeah.
And I was never really the biggest like, Spawn person. I mean, I was aware of it and I read it and I've read more of it since, but like that's a pretty cool logo as it pertains to the embodiment of the character.
Yeah. I bet that was Comic Craft. I bet that was Richard Starkington.
Yeah.
That's the time period. Yeah, it's like looking at these logos, that was like one of my, something I always kept in mind is the medium of what the cover art was going to be. If it was going to be a painted or more the realistic, or if it's going to be more flat, traditional type. Whenever I was designing, and I mean, sometimes I really wish I was actually doing all of the final cover treatment of every issue of every when I'd see especially when I design, because I might design something for like, this is issue number 1, this is the artwork we're going to have, and it sometimes the effects and everything you do on the logo, I learned this early on. I would just put a lot of effects on something and then it looks great on that issue, and then like 10 issues later there's a totally different, it's all flat, right, and it just doesn't look good at all. So I've always during the process of designing going forward, I tried to keep that in mind. When I would design something, I would actually supply like a more basic version of it, maybe one with more Photoshop effects. And because I basically, when I would design these stuff, I would pass it on to the bullpen in Marvel, and they would do and they'll do a great job. And especially when, if you're a new designer and you're given this is the logo, this is the artwork, put the logo on the book, and you're afraid to step on anyone's toes, you're just going to do what you do. And if the editor doesn't tell you, hey, you know what, you could probably incorporate this a little better in the artwork if you take off that drop shadow, or if you, adjust the colors for this to match it. If you don't have that, then it could look real bad. But
let me ask you an interesting question. So, or at least I think it's interesting. There have been, I think, a fair amount of styles of covers that have been recycled over the years.
Oh yeah.
In terms of, just the composition and, character placement and things like that. For someone like yourself, when you get to something like that, and I'm thinking of like there's the Dark Phoenix issue where she's gigantic and she has the logo of the XMen in her hand, or I think it's like Uncanny or just maybe just XMen, and she's like holding it and crushing it. In a case like that, are you doing that, or are you?
It's a little bit of a every once in a while there's like I remember there was some promo art for Spider-Man One More Day. Okay, I remember it because Joe Quesada was doing the artwork, and he just needed some typography. Like he wanted almost the typography in perspective, like make real heavy block letters. He wanted like One More Day, and then he would take that and then he used that as his template to draw over it, and he made his promo art for that. And I'm like, that was pretty cool. Other times I remember usually the art, like when it comes down to like the logo being broken up into pieces or something, the artist does that. That's and my She-Hulk logo that I did, I remember I forget who did those covers. But at some point, I think there was a few different artists, but at some point, the artist did one where she's like breaking it, and it's like the logo, it was like all broken up into pieces, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Not, I mean, not normally. It's when I would design something, it's going to be for like the main version of like the best case, version. And I would usually mock up the very first issue of a comic, like whatever the first issue would be. I try to set the tone, and then for other, depending on the book, like going forward, if it's a bigger book, I remember for the 2014 Spider-Man relaunch, that was when he came back. He was Dr. Octopus for a while. It was when he came back, I think that was 2014.
Yep.
That was one of the cases where I tried to do the best version of the original Amazing Spider-Man logo I could do. And I like tried to supply him with like many different sizes of webs to go in the back, so that like you could always complement it with no matter what the artwork is behind it. So you could have like really thin webs if that's what the artwork required, or you could have a super thick if it was a real dark blocky artwork, who knows? Because I think they were putting out like I think they still are putting out an Amazing Spider-Man comic every week or something like that, right? Isn't it like just all an ongoing thing, and they have different artists rotating? So I don't know how well they actually use that. I have to go back in history to look to see if they ever actually used all of those, but that was
very thoughtful of you to
I tried,
give them so many
I gave
options.
it, and I remember I wrote out instructions and all this stuff so that if they ever, hopefully at some point, like I was never like technically I was in the bullpen, I guess, for a while, but I was never like doing day-to-day covers. So, but I mean, I just remember being like, if I was young and I came across this instructions on how to do this, like a lot of being a designer is just looking at other people's files. I don't know if you even realize that. It's like you learn so much about the technical side of designing from opening up somebody else, a better designer than you, or at least an older designer, someone that knows something that you don't, and just looking and seeing how they did it. So I tried to supply whenever I could, especially later on when I was passing something on to the bullpen. I don't know who's going to get that in the bullpen. I might know the original guy that's get it, but who knows? There's different people coming through that all the time. If somebody gets put on a different book, somebody starts working with a different editor. So hopefully, and they could keep going forward and making the comic look as good as possible, making the logo complement the artwork was always something I was trying to strive to do. Like try not to make it look, this logo does not belong on this artwork, which you see sometimes. I mean, it's
probably hard to do in some cases because the art is coming in at a different time, and it's coming in.
And Marvel puts out so many books. It's like they just don't have, and it's not gonna. It's something that probably won't affect sales,
right?
Especially if it's a character that people care about or don't care about or whatever. It's just something that as someone that I guess respects the artwork, it just comes from like I want to make. I know that this is a publication that's going to go down in history somewhere. Someone down the line is going to like look up this issue and you see your logo, or you see you want it to be something good. I think at some point I started thinking of this. I mean, maybe not so much later on, but at some point I thought of like, these are historical documents that
is your legacy, man.
It's like, someone, especially with like, MCU now, and you like Spider-Man and you see who these characters are. I mean,
they're taking logo and designs from the comics. Like we mentioned earlier, Hawkeye.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hawkeye was just great.
I don't know if, all of those design elements were from the artist. I believe it was David Aja.
I think so. Yeah. I mean,
or if
awesome.
they were from you or somebody else, but they looked awesome in the books, and they look awesome on TV too.
I thought it was like whenever it's a non-traditional, like, non-superhero, way to go. It's a more elegant, designery. I don't know what the right exact word is for it, but
let's go with designery.
Designery. I mean, the Hawkeye stuff, it looks awesome, and it's just something that you don't see whenever it's different, and it stands out on its own, and it's well designed. It's, and then why wouldn't you take that for, like First of all, there's not a lot of Hawkeye logos to begin with. There wasn't that many Hawkeye books to go from.
Yeah.
So why not go with one of the best ones too? So,
yeah.
You know.
Well, Pat, thank you. I can say that our logo is certainly spectacular, and thank you for that. And it will stand the test of time, and it'll be your legacy. You'll go down in history as the maker of the Dollar Bin Bandits logo, the second maker. I don't want to, Joe's first out of the gate was pretty awesome.
Hey, look, I basically just took your idea and just finagled it a little bit. Just
Nagel bagel.
Isn't that how the Mona Lisa was created?
Yeah, pretty much.
I think so.
Some other Lisa, and they just finagled it to Mona.
Just moaned it up a little bit.
Mona. Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Well, yeah, really. Thank you, Pat, for the logo and for sitting down and chatting with us. And
man.
Talking.
Hey, look, everyone, if you guys like this episode, let us know. Rate, subscribe, comment. You know where to find us. We won't hit you with that stuff. We'll leave it for next time. But make sure you tune in to us next week.